Morning.
Ya, voy a tener que las faldas. Are they this way or are they this way?
Jet, would you please call the roll?
Sure. Good morning. Director Recajo,
Present.
Director Ortiz,
Present.
Chairman Barclay,
Here.
Director Jakes,
Here.
Director Lee. Director Jakes, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Our next order of business is the approval of the committee minutes of
Good
April
morning.
9th, 2025. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Recajo, seconded by Director Lee, that the minutes from April 9th, 2025 be approved. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Lee,
Yes.
Director Jakes,
Yes.
Chairman Barclay,
Yes.
Director Ortiz,
Yes.
Director Recajo.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Our next order of business is the finance report. McComb.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman. Good morning, Directors.
Morning.
Morning.
One moment. We're gonna pull up the presentation. Okay, I am going to take you through the March financial results, which will also include year-to-date through March, which is the first quarter of this year, so we can look at some of the trends through the first quarter of this year as well. So on the system-generated revenue side of things, you'll see the results here for March show some recovery from February. So total fare and passes just slightly under budget for the month of March. Passes doing a little bit better, farebox doing a little bit below what we anticipated in the budget, but overall coming in pretty close to the budget and 1.2 million better than where we were last March. On the non-farebox side of things, you can see we're trending ahead of budget. That's because the additional investment income that we're seeing as a result of the higher rates and the higher balances that we're able to sustain in our reserve. So overall, total system generated revenue, 1.4 million better than budget for the month and 2.9 million ahead of where we were last year. Looking then year to date through March, so this is the first quarter results, we can see the impact of that February and the fare and pass totals there. So 2.9 million below budget and relatively flat year to date in terms of fare and pass revenue so far this year. On the non-fare box side, continuing to see that additional investment income, which is producing positive results. So overall, they more than offset the fare and pass side of things. So revenue total for the first quarter of the year, 3.2 million better than budget, 6.2 million better than where we were last year. On the expenses side of things, for the month of March, you can see here on the right-hand side, at or slightly better than budget across all of our main expense categories. Labor is pretty much trending right on track with budget. That's because we have restored the workforce and restored the associated service. So our labor expenditures are tracking pretty much on target with what we expected. Material, we are seeing better results than we had anticipated because we've got more of those new rail vehicles in place, and those are saving us on the rail material consumption side of things. Fuel is coming in positive for the month. That's going to be a trend that we see continue throughout the year as we've locked in a better rate than we had anticipated for this year. Power, there's some timing there, so you'll see year to date we're pretty much flat to budget. Security services, we see being slightly ahead of budget for the month. That continues the trend that we saw last month and what we do anticipate for next month as well, as we see slightly lower usage of that, those contractual security services. Other expenses coming in $5 million better than budget. This is primarily due to timing on some of our contractual spend. We do expect the first half of the year, we're going to see more positive variance out of those contractual expenses. So you see that all loaded up here. First quarter results, labor, again, tracking right on budget. Material ahead of budget. Again, we're going to expect to see that continue so long as we see that lower parts consumption associated with those new vehicles. Fuel, better than budget. That's a trend that we're going to see continue. Power should stay on budget. You can see security, other expenses there similar to what they were in March. On the public funding side of things, we'll have 3 slides. The first is our most recent public funding results. So you can see sales tax, the associated pizza match, and then the real estate transfer tax. On this page, sales tax coming in well ahead of budget, so good results here. for the first month of collections. Those are reflecting January. So total for the month, 9.9 million favorable to budget across our public funding sources. We closed out 2024. So in 2024, we finished 17.6 million ahead of budget on public funding. So that helps offset some of what we have in the reserve. You can see that sales tax finished better than we had anticipated. Real estate transfer tax a little bit behind what we had anticipated. But overall, pretty much right on budget, a little bit of favorability out of our public funding. So year to date then so far in 2025, you can see here a little bit of lag in some of the various sources that we collect. But so far, 17.6 million favorable to where we anticipated public funding. So it's good to see that favorability, especially as we start the year. I know there's a lot of uncertainty, potentially with how the rest of the year will shape out, but it's really great to see public funding coming in strong here. On the commodities side of things, there hasn't been a change on commodities. I will note that we do have a power RFP that is out on the street right now. And so when that RFP completes, we'll look to lock in our power purchase for 2026 so that we can lock in that rate and have certainty around our power expense for next year. That concludes my report. I'm available for any questions.
Just a couple of things, Tom, if you can do this for me very quickly. One, staying on that screen, can you just explain very quickly about the for purchase of 70%, while power and natural gas are at 100% for 2026? Why is that at 70?
Yeah, so usually what we do on the fuel side of things is we never purchase 100% because we want to leave some room for consumption that may come in short of that due to sort of additional fuel efficiency or changes in service levels. Usually we would lock in about 85%. We're keeping it a little bit lower in part because we hadn't seen a lot of favorable pricing as we look to lock in that for next year. And then we're also leaving ourselves a little bit of room next year as we think about sort of what those, what the gap might look like. I will say that we have seen spot prices come down. So we are seeing some additional benefit from the fact that we're leaving a little bit more unhedged. So we actually are seeing a lower price per gallon by leaving a little bit less of it unhedged.
Okay, and my other question is, just briefly explain, because the impetus of my question is for months, purchases of security services were unfavorable, and now they're favorable. And I remember that had come up with the public. So if you could explain how it shifted from unfavorable to favorable for the past couple of months and moving.
Yeah, so if you recall, as we put the budget together last year for this year, we added additional funding into the security services line because we had been running unfavorable. So I said, okay, we're going to go ahead and put in the amount there that we anticipate spending, which is pretty consistent with what we had been spending, especially the second half of last year. So we are budgeted at, I would say, the appropriate level, given what we expect off those security services. And then in the months of March and April, we have some contract transition as one of the contracts reached the end of its time, and we're sort of transitioning to another contract. So there's a little bit of favorability due to that contract transition timing.
Good, thank you. I have no further questions.
We'll take questions from other directors. Director Jacques, Director Ricao, Director Ortiz,
No question.
Chairman Barclay.
Just one question. Fuel, natural gas. Is there any any benefits that can be derived if we were to the co-agency Board of Education purchase of them partner?
So we've looked at it from time to time to do joint procurements for some of these commodities. There are diminishing efficiencies of scale. We are, and we work with advisors from Ameresco on our purchases, and sort of at a certain point, you reach that efficiency, like you're buying enough to get sort of the best sort of bulk pricing that you can get. Sometimes if you go too large, you start to then limit the number of suppliers who could actually supply that for you. So you get to a point where you're buying so much that you really start to narrow the market in terms of who could supply that to you. So we feel like we're buying enough to get sort of a real efficient pricing given sort of the size that we're at. I would be concerned if we went too high because then we would, potentially sort of limit potential suppliers from it and not get the benefit of the pricing benefit that we want to see.
Director Lee,
Thanks for the report. No further questions.
Director Jakes, there are no further questions.
As we move to agenda item number 4, it is a review of an ordinance authorizing a lease to Polk Transit Food Services, Inc. of retail concession space located at 1713 West Polk Street, Chicago, on the Pink Line.
Good morning. Bill Mooney, your Chief Infrastructure Officer. Staff recommends approval of an ordinance to authorize the lease of retail concession space located at the Polk Pink Line Station, Polk Transit Food Services. The lease includes 252 square feet of retail concession space, with the tenant paying an initial annual rent of $35 per square foot for a base term of 10 years with 2 5-year options to extend, and annual rent escalations of 3%. Polk Transit Food Services was sole responsible bidder and will continue to operate the space as a Dunkin' Donuts, which they had under a previous agreement, which is no longer in effect. Total annual rent for the first year from the lease is projected at $8,820. I'll be happy to take any questions on this item.
Who covers the insurance? Is that one else or them?
It's on them.
It's on them? Okay. Thank you.
Director Lee?
No questions. Thanks, Bill.
Chairman Barclay?
No question.
Director Ortiz?
No questions. Thank you.
Director Recao?
Do you have a sense of what our vacancy rate for these retail spaces is these days?
I'm going to think the last number I saw was close to 60% at this point.
60%. What are we doing to more actively convey that these locations are available and incentivize, especially small businesses and minority and women-owned businesses, to know that this exists and that we offer prime location, of course, and transit, et cetera? And what could we do to get more people to?
Yeah, absolutely. So as we talked a little bit last month, we had a series of them, actually 2 months ago, where we talked a little bit about, we've been going kind of out, testing out the market by various areas to see if there's interest out there, what type of opportunities are there. We're also coordinating that with a broader strategic initiative around rethinking the space, right? As our customer base has changed, as desires of the spaces have changed, the board has supported being a little more innovative and creative with how we actuate the space for the community and make it available. We're trying to find the right balance of it being, these never have been huge economic engines, right? We're not thriving on the concessionaire business being the driving force of our revenue stream. But they do create alternative revenue that is beneficial to the authority. And not all of them are equitable for that sense. So when we do go out with these soft feel outs to market, we do kind of our typical procurement strategy, which we do with any procurement. We advertise it to all listed vendors on our broadcast for CTA's internal network. That we use a brokerage service that goes to a much broader real estate industry that goes out there. We post publicly on that site. We'll do walkthroughs so that people can get inside, take a look at it, see what the possibilities are. And we usually have the big 4D signs available there, and then we push it out to community groups as well for kind of their disbursement in their local newsletters and such forth. So, we are looking at that broader pilot initiatives to do a little bigger market research on it this summer. We've talked a lot about it as a board, looking at how we can community activate the space. We have a couple other areas that we're having some conversations with entities. I don't really want to get in front of that. The board will see hopefully a little bit later this summer that I think are in line with some of the direction you've offered about how we can look at partnerships and benefits to think bigger about these spaces than just kind of the small retail concessions. So,
are we partnering with any organizations to help us with this endeavor? I think like chambers of commerce or other types of business associations.
Absolutely. So we're not here yet, but I have my friends Bill and Trudy who regularly come and speak at the board meeting, and we have gone out with them numerous times to look at the available spaces in their footprint. Even though we have not broadly put them out to market, they have seen them. They have then, as they get people that have come to the chamber, the Rogers Park Chamber, they offer those, hey, like I know this space is available as you're looking at space, as there's opportunities here. And so as we start to hear interest, we would consider going out to market as we get that feedback. But, there are various chambers that we have had engagement with and taking them to spaces, let them kind of see what's available out there, what it really looks like, so that because their ears to the grindstone, right? So they hear, as people have interest in coming into their communities or looking to expand their footprints in the communities, and they often get poked about those opportunities. Are you aware of things? They can also say, yeah, I know CTA's got some space here over by Morris that would be of interest. So.
Thanks. I would welcome an opportunity in a future meeting to present to the public what does it look like to, recruit and bring in more small businesses into our community and what we offer, what the spaces are, what you get. Some sort of presentation would be helpful.
Sure, I think that's in line with our expectation to be able to come back to the board with some ideas of our pilot later this summer, and so we can certainly put that together for you.
Thanks.
Yes, Director, I would just add, your question's well timed as you're getting from what Bill's talking about. We're in discussions and underway to ramp up engagement more broadly on our concession spaces so that people understand it holistically across the system and raise awareness and engagement around it this summer. So you are going to see an elevated, more externally facing plan to invite more engagement on this topic.
Great, thanks.
Director Ja?
Good, no questions.
Director Jakes, there are no further questions.
May I now have leave to place this item on the omnibus for board approval?
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved by Director Rakeo, seconded by Director Lee. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Ja?
Yes.
Director Rakeo?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Lee? Motion passes. Director Jakes, we may now proceed to agenda item number 5.
Agenda item 5 is the review of an ordinance authorizing a lease to Chomp Pizza. Limited Liability Corporation of retail concession space at 1710 West 18th Street on the Pink Line.
Thank you. Staff recommends approval of an ordinance to authorize the lease of retail concession space located at the 18th Street Pink Line Station to Chomp's Pizza LLC. Lease includes 205 square feet of retail concession space, with the tenant paying an initial annual rent of $35 per square foot for a base term of 10 years with one 5-year option to extend, and annual rent escalations of 3%. Chomp's will operate the space as a food service cafe store. Total annual rent for the first year from the lease is projected at $6,525.96. I'll be happy to take any questions on this item.
I have no questions, Bill.
Director Ja?
Thanks.
Director Rakeo?
Questions?
Director Ortiz? Chairman Barclay?
No question.
Director Lee?
I want to say I like donuts and pizza, so no question.
Director Jakes, there are no further questions.
May I now have leave to place this item on the omnibus for board approval?
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved by Director Rakeo, seconded by Director Lee. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Director Rakeo? Director Ja? Motion passes. Director Jakes, you may now proceed to agenda item number 6.
Item 6 is the review of an ordinance authorizing an amendment to an intergovernmental agreement with the Chicago Housing Authority for the acquisition of real property for the Red Line Extension Project. Bill?
Staff recommends approval of an ordinance to authorize an amendment to an intergovernmental agreement with the Chicago Housing Authority for the acquisition of a parcel and acceptance of a permanent and temporary easement of property for the Red Line Extension Project. Chicago Transit Board authorized an IGA with CHA under ordinance number 02-117 in October of 2023. The IGA comprised 3 parcels, a fee simple parcel, a permanent easement parcel, and a temporary easement parcel. Based on the recommendations from the Housing and Urban Development Authority, CHA, IGA is being modified, so the permanent easement parcel is now a fee simple parcel. All other terms remain the same. I'll be happy to take any questions on this item.
I have no questions, Bill.
Director Lee?
No questions.
Chairman Barclay?
No question.
Director Ortiz?
Question.
Director Rakeo?
Questions?
Director Ja? Director Jakes, there are no questions, no further questions.
May I now have leave to place this item on the omnibus for board approval?
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved by Director Rakeo, seconded by Director Lee. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Ja? Director Rakeo? Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Lee?
Yes.
Motion passes. Director Jakes, we may now proceed to agenda item number 7.
Agenda item 7 is the review of an ordinance authorizing the purchase of real property located at 2274 North Milwaukee Avenue for all stations accessibility program on the Blue Line. Bill?
Staff recommends approval of an ordinance authorizing the acquisition of real property located at 2274 North Milwaukee in support of CTA's California Blue Line ASAP project. Staff has identified the need for additional property for the expansion of the station platform to accommodate the new elevators, as well as the installation of 3 sets of exit stairs. The identified property is required to accommodate this work. CTA and the seller, 2274 North Milwaukee LLC, have agreed on a purchase price of $500,000. The site is currently an unimproved vacant parcel that is approximately 1,356 square feet. I would note that this is the first of 3 items you'll be seeing in acquisition. This is the first one that we've finalized a deal on. So I'll be happy to take any questions on this.
No, this is absolutely fabulous. So thank you, Bill. No questions.
Director Ja?
No questions.
Director Rakeo?
No questions.
Director Ortiz? Chairman Barclay?
No questions.
Director Lee?
No questions, just to say that I'm excited to see this happening and first of 3 and can't wait to hear more. Thank you.
Director Jakes, there are no further questions.
And I now have leave to place this item on the omnibus for board approval.
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved by Director Rakeo, seconded by Director Lee. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Director Rakeo? Director Ja? Director Jakes, the motion passes. We may now proceed to agenda item number 8, purchase and/or sales award recommendations.
Our next order of business is the review of contract number A1, which is the contract award for transit operations. I have no questions.
We will ascertain whether any other board members have questions. Director Ja? Director Rakeo?
No.
Director Ortiz? Chairman Barclay? Director Lee?
None.
Director Jakes, we may now proceed to contract numbers B1 through B5.
Review of contract numbers B1 through B5, which are contract awards for infrastructure. I have no questions.
Director Lee?
None.
Director Chairman Barclay?
No question.
Director Ortiz?
No.
Director Rakeo?
Questions.
Director Ja?
Questions?
Director Jakes, we may now proceed to contract number G1.
A review of contract G1 is a contract award for technology. I have no questions.
Director Ja?
Questions?
Director Rakeo?
No questions.
Director Ortiz?
None.
Chairman Barclay?
Question.
Director Lee?
None. Thank you.
Director Jakes, you may now proceed to contract H1.
Contract H1, which is a contract award for safeties. I have no questions.
Director Lee, any questions?
None. Thank you.
Chairman Barclay?
No question.
Director Ortiz?
No questions.
Director Rakeo?
Questions.
Director Ja?
Questions?
Director Jakes, there are no further questions or contracts.
Since there are no further questions on the contracts, may I have leave to place the 8 contracts on the omnibus?
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved by Director Rakeo, seconded by Director Lee, that the items review be placed on the omnibus for board approval. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Director Rakeo?
Yes.
Director Ja? Director Jakes, motion passes.
Since there is no further business to come before the committee, may I have a motion to approve the omnibus and recommend the omnibus for board approval?
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved by Director Rakeo, seconded by Director Lee. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Ja?
Yes.
Director Rakeo?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Jakes, the motion passes.
And finally, at 9:54 a.m., let the record reflect it. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved by Director Rakeo, seconded by Director Lee, that the Finance Audit and Budget Committee meeting for May 14th, 2025 be adjourned. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Ortiz? Director Rakeo? Director Ja?
Yes.
Director Jakes, the motion passes.
All right, well, that's the end of our meeting. What are you going to do?
Morning, I would like to call to order the meeting of the Chicago Transit Board for May 14th, 2025. Georgette, please call the roll.
Director Ja?
Here.
Director Rakeo?
Present.
Director Ortiz?
Here.
Chairman Barclay?
Here.
Director Jakes?
Here.
Director Lee?
Here.
I will note for the record that Director Michael Eady is absent. Chairman Barclay, you do have a quorum.
Our next order of business is public comments, Georgette.
Chairman Barclay, we do have public comments for today. I will call our registered speakers up and ask that you keep your comments and your remarks to 3 minutes. Our first speaker for today is Ben Shar Joe? Shargat.
People say it all sorts of ways.
I like Sharjo. Okay, no, Shargat. It's Ben Shargat, everybody. Come on up.
Up here?
Yeah, it's here.
1 second.
Oh, thanks.
Feet.
Thank you. Right.
Wonderful. This microphone, that's like creepy ahead of you. So if you want to scoot up a little bit.
I can, I'll scoot up. I'll scoot up.
Okay,
I need to read that anyway.
now it's a foot ahead. To the right. There we go.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
My name is Ben. I'm a proud Chicagoan, a daily CTA rider, and someone who is blind and uses my guide dog to navigate the city. We work together. I chose to move to Chicago precisely because of the robust public transit system, which is not just a convenience, but a necessity in a city of this size. And for people with disabilities, it's our connection to employment, healthcare, community, and independence in general. I take the Brown Line to work. I take the Ashland bus to see friends. I utilize many other lines to get around the city. Living in Lakeview, I fully recognize the privilege of being close to so many bus and train lines. However, these options won't matter if future disability inclusion is not considered, or if we lose any of the current accessibility features that make the system usable. For me, these include audible stop calls from the ever famous CTA voice, bus stops that beep to announce their presence, and well-placed truncated domes. But this is by no means a normative list of the accessibility features that disabled riders rely on every day. That's why I'm here today, to urge the board to consider and conduct a thorough, transparent, and inclusive search for the new president of the CTA. The person chosen will shape the future of public transportation in this city for years to come. And for those of us who depend on the system, that direction needs to include a focus on accessibility as a core value from day one, not just as a side project or afterthought. The search also needs to include the voices of people with disabilities in leadership conversations. We have firsthand experience navigating the system, and we know where it succeeds and where it falls short. Inaccessible stations and service interruptions are not just inconveniences for people who don't drive. They are barriers to fully participating in city life for me and all Chicagoans who rely on the system. Chicago can and should be a leader in equitable public transportation. That starts with choosing a president who understands that accessibility is essential to equity and who is committed to listening to and partnering with the people who rely on the CTA the most. Thank you for your time and for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman, I did also want to suggest that Mr. Shargo, with regards to current disability issues, you can speak with Molly Poppy on our team about any feedback he has to discuss about CTA currently.
Thank you. Thanks for the recommendation.
Our next public speaker is Sheila Black Haneke. Okay, we have been, to the board, we've been given packets of Narcan. I am going to give this to our bus and rail people. Donald Brown.
Yeah, she,
Unless any members of the board would like, I can go get you some packets.
yeah, I like to keep them in my car.
I will get that. I will get one from Mr. Bonds for you. Okay.
Just speak into this.
Can start.
My name is Sheila Haneke, and I'm here representing the West Side Heroin Opioid Task Force. I'm here to urge board to please work with CTA leadership to launch a pilot program that has been stalled after rapid advancement through CTA channels. At the November 2023 CTA board meeting, I testified as a member of the task force on the subject of getting the opioid overdose antidote Narcan onto train platforms. After my testimony, 2 members of senior leadership at the CTA joined our task force Narcan on the CTA working group. By March 2024, our working group proposed a pilot program to install Narcan dispensers on CTA platforms. The proposal was reviewed and revised by the CTA, and in February 2025, we learned that the CTA and Cook County Health System were very close to finalizing the interagency agreements required to install the machines at 6 stations across 4 lines, blue, red, green, and pink. That is almost 90 days ago now. Every day the pilot is delayed is a day someone can overdose on or near a train, causing interruptions in service, deployment of emergency personnel, and untold anguish for the person and their family. I know this personally, as my son David passed away from an overdose, an opioid overdose at the Rosemont Blue Line station in November 2021. Had Narcan been available on the platform, someone could have used it to keep him alive until paramedics who were called by the CTA arrived. That station is included in the pilots. The pilot can be launched without significant cost to the CTA, as it is a shining example of collaboration between public and private entities, each leveraging their strengths and resources. 6 machines will be funded and managed by Cook County's Health's Office of Behavioral Health. Chicago Recovery Alliance will stock and maintain all the machines in the pilot in an agreement with the Cook County Department of Public Health in collaboration with CCH Office of Behavioral Health. CTA employees are not expected to administer Narcan. No, their job is to move people. The purpose of this pilot is to allow riders, empower riders to help one another. The CTA has granted access to its property and will communicate the purpose and function of the machines to its station staff. Each dispenser will not only provide Narcan, but will also feature a QR code linking to information about local community resources and supports. Chicago Recovery Alliance has also built in office hours for outreach on all rail lines that they will be coordinated with the current outreach partners CTA already has on the system, all the great work you're doing with outreach through Thresholds, Haymarket, et cetera. Please do all you can to encourage CTA leadership to launch the pilot without further delay. It is a win-win proposition and will send a clear message that the CTA cares about its ridership by empowering riders to help one another. Thank you for listening.
I have a quick question for you, and I remember
Yes, sir.
this happened, so thank you again. The red line on 95th, remember correctly, wasn't there a station there?
Yes.
Narcan?
They have a harm reduction machine at 95th. It has hygiene items as well as Narcan. The purpose here is to make the Narcan really accessible. Our machine would just be Narcan.
I see.
It would be very easily assessed on the platform. It would only have Narcan. It would not have any other items. There have been some issues with using codes on that Chicago machine, it's all good. We want as much harm reduction around the trains as possible, but this is targeted specifically on Narcan, making it specifically available to people on the platform.
It's been held up for 90 days.
Yes, we have been advancing this. CTA leadership had been very helpful, working with revisions. We proposed something, they revised it. And now there's been, I think with the change in leadership, there has been a stall, and we're just hoping we can push this over the finish line. Our membership at the West Side Heroin Opioid Task Force is eagerly awaiting this. We want to make it known to Chicago that this pilot is happening, and we're eager to see it being used so that people can use Narcan. I know earlier this week, because I will ride either the green or the blue line was shut down in the morning because someone had fallen on the track. There was a fatality. And I'll tell you, I thought to myself, I wonder if that was an opioid overdose, because frequently people are nodding out around the tracks. So again, in terms of helping to avoid delays in service, the costly emergency crews, my son overdosed multiple times and paramedics were deployed each time. And I know that is a cost to the community. So we're hoping that this could really be a win-win, as we stated.
Madam President, do you mind just having somebody from your team follow up with me to want to see where this is going?
Absolutely. I actually reached out to Ms. Henneke and the group she's representing yesterday to indicate that, we're moving forward. There's been a lot of thoughtful work on this project on both ends that I want to update you on. There were some final questions, just having had some experience with the harm reduction machine and setting that up at 95th that we had internally, just to make sure everything is executed successfully here. I just spoke with Ms. Henneke, and we're going to stay connected. She can also speak today with more detail on those final steps with Veronica Alanis on my team here, my Chief Operating Officer, and she's ready to give her an update. And then the plan was to update all of you next month.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Much, Nora, I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
We can have, so on the trains, hope we can have too.
Amen and Nashi. Thank you.
Our next public speaker is Julia Haig. Actually, if this is the letter that you emailed us, we've actually already provided it to the board members, but I will distribute this physical copy. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So my name is Julia Haj. I work for the Center for Neighborhood Technology, and I act as the coordinator for the Transportation Equity Network Coalition. And I'm speaking on behalf of the Transportation Equity Network Executive Committee and many of our coalition members. So the Transportation Equity Network, otherwise known as TEN, is a coalition of community-based organizations that work in marginalized communities, mainly in Chicago's South and West Sides. Since 2019, TEN is a CBO-led coalition that has worked to build power in communities of color by working to compensate community organizations to participate in transportation decision-making processes and engagements. Its mission to embed racial equity and mobility justice through community-driven decisions and investments. TEN has worked closely with agencies like CTA, CDOT, and Cook County on multiple occasions. And in this time, coalition partners have built relationships with these agencies so that 10 community-based organizations have been actively engaged on transportation projects and investments in the South and West Sides, ensuring racial equity principles are considered. The community-based organizations of 10 are working in Chicago's most vulnerable communities and deserve leadership at the CTA that is committed to continuing racial equity work in transportation. The 10 Executive Committee and select 10 coalition organizations represent a broader base of support for the advocacy letter that was sent to your offices on April 18th, 2025, and sent its own letter on May 13th, which uplifted the following. As the CTA undergoes a transition in leadership and faces significant challenges with a looming fiscal cliff, 10 is joining other community advocates to urge our city's leaders to reflect upon the qualifications necessary for the system's next president. This means that the Chicago Transit Board, in consultation with Mayor Johnson, should hire a qualified executive search firm to conduct a thorough nationwide search after engaging in robust stakeholder engagement with community, advocates, and CTA advisory committees. This is a standard practice throughout the public transit industry nationwide. Chicago deserves a transit leader who can demonstrate the following. 1, deep experience running a public transit system in a major metropolitan region. 2, experience with understanding, securing, and navigating the complexities of federal funding. 3, long-time practice of consistent and recent transit use. 4, a record of commitment to values of equity, transparency, collaboration, and accountability, particularly for Chicago's historically marginalized communities of color. 5, a bold vision for an expansive, accessible, and reliable transit system. And 6, a champion of public transit. We also want to note that a search must take place after the spring 2025 legislative session in the Illinois General Assembly concludes. So we thank you for your time. We hope you consider the needs of our active and growing coalition of community voices and the call for a thorough nationwide search for the next leader of the CTA. And I want to say, as the coordinator of 10 for the past 2.5 years, the CVOs that are involved are so passionate about this work, and they would love to see a thorough search happen. So in the letter, there are the signatories. So please take the time to review that, and appreciate the time you have allowed me to speak. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is Patricia Fuentes here today? Our last public comment will be given by Ms. Trudy Leon from the Rogers Park Chamber of Commerce. Good morning, Ms. Leon.
Good morning, Coach. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You have 3 minutes.
Okay. Good morning. My name is Trudy Leong, and I am the administrator at the Rogers Park Chamber of Commerce. Bill Morton, he is the president of the chamber, and he and I write the CTA almost constantly. We have our monthly pass, and it's very necessary for us, as well as for the other residents and riders of the CTA in Chicago. And we are very concerned about the safety. I know it's been mentioned many, many times, and we hear the announcements saying that there's no smoking, no eating, no gambling, and etc. on the CTA. But it is getting worse and worse. Constituents and Bill, he needs to ride the CTA late at night, but he can no longer do so anymore. He has to ride the bus. The buses are not as good as before, but it is better than the trains. He is threatened. People are violent on overnight, and people are very hesitant. They tell us that they are very hesitant to ride the CTA, the trains, especially the Red Line at night, because of the violence. And we know that it has happened. We see the news reports of things that have happened. So please address that. And then my other concern is we're speaking with the union steward about the conditions and also about the treatment of workers. So we would like a follow-up about that. We also have other constituent concerns that talk about the treatment of the security force of their canine dogs. They are trying to get the video of what they see. Sometimes the dogs are getting kicked, and oftentimes we just don't see that they have done enough, for the security force has not done enough to keep the transit safe. If let's say overnight conditions are so terrible, maybe you should consider shifting the security force to be a presence late at night when the from 11 a.m. to about 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. because those are the worst hours. Maybe the security needs to be a presence over there at that time. And we do appreciate all that you do. We know that it is not an easy job, but we do rely on the CTA. And if you write the CTA, you understand how important it is for us. So please help us address the safety concerns, and we appreciate your work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chairman. Ms. Leon, I know you've talked extensively with Bill Mooney regarding your security concerns. I'd connect you with Veronica Alanis, our Chief Operating Officer. Also, with regards to your overnight deployment, I encourage you in my update, I'm going to speak specifically to that issue and some deployments that are being done in that regard. Thank you.
Really appreciate that. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, our last public comment is a written comment, which was submitted by John Paul Jones of the Grow Greater Inglewood organization. And that has already been supplied to yourself and to the other members of the board of directors. as have other public comments that supported some of the physical comments that were made here today. We have no more for this morning.
Thank you. Our next item on the agenda is a report given by I want to at least acknowledge Alderman Moore. Do you have a comment?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. During the 10 meetings like CTA and we get a privilege to come up on behalf of our residents to speak, and I appreciate this, Chairman Barclay. And thank you so much, Pastor. I appreciate your noticing me here. And to every board member, I come up under a leader by the name of Reverend Clay Evans, and I'm reminded of something he told me. He said, never assume power before you get it. Once you get it, don't abuse it. And when you lose it, let it go. Don't try to hold on to power you don't have anymore. And as an elected official, we are challenged every day to deal with everything from what's going on in Congress, what the president is doing and not doing, to what's going on with CTA, CPS, all these things that help forward, but it's our constituents that come before us. They don't come before activists. They don't come before organizations. We listen to those folks, but it's our residents that come before us, letting us know what's important to them. And they hold us accountable and no one else when we're speaking on their behalf. I'm not sure how many of you ever served in the military. But the very freedom you breathe is what John Robeson, who served in the military, who stood on the wall in order for you to have the audacity to say that he isn't qualified. He was qualified to stand on that wall and deal with any logistical challenges that came his way. He got out of the military, and when his first assignment was working for the city government in the Park District, overseeing and working with our youth who took public transportation. And on many occasions, he had to work with CTA to make sure our communities, that our youth stayed safe. He then went to go work with the mayor's office as assistant to the deputy chief of staff, Terry Teal, if anybody know him. He was the mayor go-to guy, Terry Teal was. And John Robeson was responsible for not letting the mayor be embarrassed. That's a responsibility. He had to know what was going on. If it was a sewer problem, John had better know what was going on before the mayor and had already had a plan for it. If the buses were not running on time, not the CEO, but John had better known before the mayor and get with Terry Teal so they can have a plan. And when the mayor took over CHA after being under HUD receivership, the mayor sent Philip Jackson there because the residents knew him and were comfortable with him. But he sent John, no direct housing experience, as chief of development, because the mayor needed someone who could get the job done. He didn't do a search. He did it because he was qualified. When the business was in the uproar about the long permitting processes, it was when the mayor sent John over to buildings to set up a process permitting that today a lot of buildings and a lot of companies are appreciative of. When a longtime sewer commissioner had to leave for whatever reason, it was the mayor who sent John over there to keep that train running, and he did it well. When the aviation commissioner stepped down, it was the mayor who sent John over there, who did an excellent job at aviation and transportation. He did it not because he was a political hack. I hate political hacks. He did it because, and sent him over there because he had the spirit of a Jamie Reed and the spirit of a Lori Healy who just passed away. You know why? Those people get the job done. You could check the resumes. They got the receipts for it. And when he had his challenging, but successful Democratic convention that everybody rave about, it was John Robeson who quarterbacked that thing between all the departments. But nobody said, let's do a search and make sure we find the qualified. You see, this is not simply about Mr. Roberson. This is about stopping the BS, you all. This is about the civil rights struggle that people like John's ancestors and my ancestors endured, that opened the very door that forced the people to say that you're not qualified. These are forefathers that fought against to allow people like you all to move the goalpost. I'm reminded of something that Reverend Jesse Jackson said. He said, when the rules are public and the playing field is even, we can compete. Don't move the goalpost now. If you want a search and all of that, put it in your policies next time. If you want it, get 26 members, do the work, and get 26 members of the city council to pass a resolution that say going forward, there's gotta be a search every time. Do not change the goalposts and don't change the rules in the middle of a game. Otherwise, there's gonna be problems with continue within our city. I'm a person about bringing our city together. And one thing I don't like, and I appreciate a lot of voices, I don't like rubber stamps. I like people who are independent voices. People tell you that. But make the rules public. Okay? Make the rules public. Make the playing field even. Do not change the goalpost in the middle of the game, because it's hard for people to compete at that time. And when we talk about organization of activists coming up and saying, we talk to the West Side, we talk to those disadvantaged folks and all of that. No, you haven't. No, you haven't. I'm gonna be honest with you. All those organizations, usually young white people standing up trying to be the saviors of people. Everybody know I'm straight with this stuff. But when I see you come and work with me, come to my community, if my community is saying that, and the residents, their voices are saying that, the ones I represent, the ones that hold me responsible, because they can vote me out anytime, then those are the people that I listen to. And so right now, what I encourage people to do is not assume power that you do not have. Work with the mayor that put you here. Don't be a backbiting snake who he's entrusting for people.
I would like to, yes. I'm sorry, is this okay?
I didn't say names.
Let him continue and finish, and then you can make a remark.
But when you throw a rock at Doug, people do say ouch when they hit them. And I did not say a name. And so therefore, I want people to make sure that I'm wrapping up right now. I want to make sure that the people's voices are heard. And then if you want to do that, you do that in policy next time around, or you get 26 votes from the city council, the people that have to answer to the people to pass a resolution. Thank you so much, and I appreciate it.
Was that okay?
I'm not saying that was okay. I'm just saying if you'd like to make a comment, it's okay.
Was that okay?
It was public.
It wasn't noted that that was gonna be a public comment. Isn't there a rule that people have to come in within time and?
It's up to the chairman of the board.
Let me just state that I didn't know the alderman was coming. Alderman was not on the agenda, but when I saw him and Reverend Jakes pointing him out to me, out of deference, I did allow him to speak, but he wasn't on the agenda. I'd like to move on at this time. Thank you. Thank you to all commentators. Our next item on business on the agenda is a report from the ADA Advisory Committee. Laura Saltzman, the chair of the ADA Committee.
I had to go slow again, but.
Good morning. It's good to
Morning.
see you, Laura Salzman. Just speak up.
All right, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
All right, yeah. Hello, my name is Laura Saltzman, and I'm the chair of the ADA Advisory Committee and a transportation policy analyst for Access Living. The committee last met on April 14th, 2025. We began by approving the January 13th, 2025 meeting minutes and hearing public comment regarding a bus stop removal in Uptown that has negatively impacted seniors and people with disabilities. A resident shared that Route 36 southbound at Montrose and Broadway was removed 6 years ago, requiring residents with mobility impairments to walk 1,000 feet instead of 200 feet to access public transportation. This is of particular concern because there is a building with a significant number of seniors who relied on that stop. CTA's Planning Department committed to investigate the issue and work with CDOT, who had a representative in attendance, thanks to you all. And I'm happy to note that I've been informed this stop will be relocated so that will be once again more accessible to seniors in the area. This is another example of the value of CDOT, CTA, and the disability community communicating together in the same room on transit issues. Next, we had Bill Mooney's infrastructure presentation. The committee received updates on ASAP program projects. Currently, 7 stations are under construction, with 8 additional stations in the design phase. The committee was encouraged by the progress at Racine and Austin stations, with Austin Green Line's groundbreaking taking place on March 31st. The committee also learned about the digital service and elevator alert displays being piloted at the RPM stations. We appreciate the improvements, though committee members were frustrated that new displays will not have audio functions. Committee members requested that a text to audio feature be incorporated into future iterations of these displays with QR code access that would provide audio suggested as an interim solution. We appreciate that CTA was responsive to those concerns and considered solutions that would help mitigate the issue. We have now learned that they have applied for grants for digital signage with an audio component through the 5310 program. Appreciate again the response to the community's feedback on that. Committee also received security updates from Eddie Winters and Veronica Alanis. We had a robust discussion about code of conduct missions, particularly regarding smoking on trains, which the committee emphasized should be viewed as a public health issue beyond other types of code of conduct violations, and that requires consistent intervention beyond targeted enforcement periods. There are concerns, again, about conflating smoking, which is a public health problem, with other code of conduct violations, and that the methods being used for intervention, whether they are appropriate. Committee also received information about the extensive homeless outreach efforts taking place on the red and blue lines through partnerships with social service agencies, which have resulted in 265 shelter placements and 104 permanent housing connections since January 2023. We appreciate the level of service provided and the understanding that multiple touch points are needed to serve this population, that unhoused people are not inherently dangerous, and that they deserve dignity, that people sleeping on trains are not doing so because it is their first choice and is reflective of the ongoing issue of lack of shelter beds and affordable and accessible housing in the city. We encourage the city of Chicago to continue to prioritize improving the situation that so it ensures shelter and housing meet existing accessibility standards and law. I think the committee would welcome expanding the contract the CTA has and work it is doing to serve the unhoused population, considering the level of need and the value of the service being provided. John Cherwinski provided an update on the Smart Streets pilot that uses camera-based enforcement to keep bus lanes and the committee discussed how this initiative supports people with disabilities, both by improving service reliability and ensuring bus stops remain accessible. Committee members raised concerns about ensuring accessible loading zones are maintained adjacent to protected bike lanes, particularly for people with mobility disabilities who use rideshare and paratransit services. Again, it was extremely valuable to have CDOT there to discuss their considerations and planning and for them to hear concerns directly from members of the committee. I would like to thank the CTA and the board for their work to encourage routine CDOT attendance in the meetings. Finally, Delphine Labe shared the first report from our new wayfinding subcommittee, which met on March 21st with excellent attendance. Key priorities included improving the presentation of accessibility information on the CTA website, incorporating accessible features throughout the system for users with various disabilities, and addressing audio announcements on the trains. Looking ahead, the committee will continue to monitor these initiatives while maintaining our focus on comprehensive accessibility throughout the system. Our next meeting is scheduled for July 14th, 2025. We appreciate the board supports of these efforts and look forward to further progress in 2025.
Thank you, Ms. Sullivan. Are there any questions for Ms. Sullivan?
Just a quick comment that I'm encouraged to hear that CDOT is in attendance, and I'm glad to hear there's more cooperation and collaboration. So thanks for the report. Appreciate the work of the committee.
Thank you. I think there have been genuine infrastructure improvements because of the board's encouragement of getting CDOT to attend the full meetings, which, as you know, they didn't used to. So really appreciate it. I don't know that that bus stop, for instance, would have been relocated, which is a meaningful, tangible improvement for the folks around there. So thanks.
So that now that we got CDOT to show up and collaborate, is there any other agency that you all would like to be at the table?
I'll not have to mull over before I get mad with power. But I mean, I think CDOT was most important, but I'll talk it over with the committee. See, I'm sure there is an intersection that would make sense, at least for sometimes being there.
And I'm glad to hear that CDOT is now collaborating, but I know in our streets, a lot of different departments come together and sometimes it's above and beyond those two, CTA and CDOT. So let us know if you need help bringing others to the table.
Will do. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next item of business on the agenda is our president's report, which will be given by our acting president, Nora Learson.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, directors. Before I give an update, particularly on the legislative front and some other initiatives underway, I wanted to start for a few moments just recognizing that I know people that follow our system closely and our service are aware that we've had incidents in the past few weeks regarding people entering the right of way and being tragically hurt or killed. And I wanted to just first recognize that and reassure the board and the public that, like all incidents, safety department and our team looks very closely at all of the details related to what occurred. Out of respect to the individuals involved, I'm not going to speak publicly about the circumstances at this time, but I wanted to reassure you that we look closely at those incidents like we do all of them. I wanted to recognize it. And I know something on people's minds in particular is the impact on our employees when something like that occurs. So I wanted to also offer up, because I know questions have come that way, just a reminder that we do have at CTA an employee assistance program that is offered to every employee. Also, following an incident, managers are trained with a specific mental health training around this issue because we have recognized that our system and the vulnerabilities that can exist in a legacy system and the things that our operators face mean that our management and our staff need to be equipped with tools to kind of take on some very heavy circumstances. So I wanted to reassure you that that training does occur. Even in the past few months, it's been evolved to a different title, CTA Cares, in order to convey a message that we recognize what employees are sometimes unfortunately faced with, and we want to equip them to manage through it. But I wanted to recognize those events and reassure everyone that we take all precautions and review all incidents for anything relevant to CTA. I'll move on also now to a legislative update. I think so many of us, including me, it's top of mind as we enter these closing weeks of the legislative session. I have been to Springfield several times. I'm headed back there shortly. And my message has been clear that we need the funding to sustain our services. I've been sharing with legislators the service that we could provide if given additional funding, as well as what that would mean for representatives and senators in their specific districts to make that meaningful for them. I have also spoken about the funding imbalance with regards to the formula and spoken with legislators in detail about the impact of that imbalance on the funding we receive and what CTA could do if that was corrected. I've also been engaged regarding the reform discussion to make sure that the reforms that are under discussion are rider focused and think of our customers and our employees in the region in a targeted way and in a way that reflects what the conversations have brought about. I've been saying often, we know what riders want. They want frequent, reliable, welcoming, safe service, and we can get to work on that currently, and then we can also consider those reforms as we move forward. In particular, something I've been raising, and I know it came up here around accessibility, is that's a topic, for example, that could benefit from some regional discussion. So let's make sure when we're having these discussions that I'm explaining to people what CTA's achieved in the past few years with regards to hiring, where our current service stands, and that whatever reforms we put into place and the way we move forward keeps those customers in mind as the end goal of what we're working towards. So we have had a series of meetings in addition to the hearings that we've held. Those continue to be underway, and I continue to be a resource to legislators as they make their final decisions on these bills, and I'll continue to keep you updated. Moving on, I want to also give an update. Earlier this week marked 100 days of my leadership of the agency, and I wanted to give you an update on the work that's been underway so that you're aware. And in order to organize that, I have kind of put forth 4 buckets of the way I've approached leadership during this period to give you a sense of what we've been driving forward. So my philosophy during this period has been that CTA is people-driven, performance-focused, that we're centered in welcoming places and rooted in dynamic partnerships. And so I'm just going to walk through a couple initiatives in these 100 days that have taken place, inspired by that view of our agency and our responsibility to our riders. So people-driven, again, means that we need to be focused on the rider experience. And I say this a lot, but our riders are not just our customers, they are our employees as well. Our frontline employees are on our system for hours at a time and are closest to the experiences of our customers as well. And they inform much of that focus. So we need to focus here on the real lived experience of the rider at CTA. And for me, that's meant here evolving our discussions beyond just statistics and data to make sure we're elevating things like our customer journey profiles, our rider profiles, that we're considering the impact of service on people from the experience they bring to getting onto CTA, to seniors, to people with disabilities, to young people, to tourists. They all experience and encounter our system in different ways. And I want to make sure we're thinking of it from a human experience. The people focus also has to do with deployment of resources that are people. I have been highly intentional about the work with the Chicago Police Department in these 100 days, and I've seen it bear fruit. So working with Chicago Police Department leadership, we have the new anti-smoking missions that have by and large been successful, and a recognition of what we know that riders want to see impact on our system. And we're appreciative of the work the police department has done there. We see tickets so far this year, almost 2,000 tickets for smoking in CTA. Over 100 of those have come from the missions themselves that are underway, and we're appreciative of that targeted focus. Again, informed by the data that we're receiving from our chatbot about where those complaints are coming in. Another example of a mission with the Chicago Police Department are safety outreach missions. And I was out last week with the police on these missions. These are when the police line a platform and engage with riders in a positive, proactive, friendly way. They provide information about riding transit in a smart way in an urban environment and answer questions riders may have about how they can best do that. This seems like a great opportunity to have riders see the visibility of the police on the system and engage with them outside of an incident or a more stressful situation. And those are 2 missions that I want to build upon with the police. They're great partners and responsive to us when we ask for specific initiatives that are driven by the data that we see. Also with our guards internally, I know there's a lot of focus around making sure we're using that money effectively. And I know we had a public commenter speak specifically on overnight security. And at the end of April, we began overnight K9 missions on the Red Line from Cermak to 95th, every station overnight, 7 days a week. This was welcomed, and I discussed it with our union partners in 308. Again, targeting those resources in a way that uses them in the best way and presents a clear, saturated environment that gives people a secure feeling on CTA is my focus. That's in addition to code of conduct missions on the Blue Line, which again are focused on the rider experience and feedback from customers about their experience on the Blue Line at those times. Last thing on people, I'll say it's a lot about my own personal interaction as leader at CTA, out in the field, on the system every day, multiple times a day, often engaging with people, making sure that we recognize the humanity of the people that work for us and making sure they understand that all of us at CTA are fighting for them and working for them and their experiences. And that's been a major tenet of my time. We, of course, had the podcast issue that's been welcomed. We have over 1,000 listens from our podcast, and that's another arena where I want to celebrate CTA employees and their history, and it's been a great, fun way to do that. Performance is that we need to be focused at CTA first and foremost on our core mission, which is quality service delivery for our riders. But we know people want frequent, reliable service. We need to be focused on that. Of course, we were excited to issue the frequent bus network and announce it last month. And that's been a successful endeavor. We're monitoring it very closely. And that's a key to my approach. We don't just want to announce additional service. We want to put resources towards monitoring it, making sure it's achieving the goals of what we committed to. We have incredible help from our operations team and from our supervision. In that, it's taken a lot of work, and I appreciate them and thank them for that work. But we're excited about that, and we're going to continue to expand that frequent network over the year. We've seen ridership increases on those routes, and something I talk about a lot in Springfield is that when you add service, ridership follows, and the frequent bus network has proven that. So another thing with performance that I want to make sure, we've been focused in the last few years very much on data around hiring, as we should be, given the labor workforce shortages that we experienced. As we all know, we've made incredible inroads on that front. We've hired over 5,000 employees in the past 2 years. We have over 100 more bus operators than we did in 2019. We have 47 less rail operators currently than we did in 2019. We're very close and living our pre-pandemic life from a labor standpoint. So it's now time to look more deeply, that when we see a service impact, right, the story is not a hiring story. The story is something that we need to engage more deeply on, whether it's a deeper capital need that we need to get advocacy and from legislators on to understand the impact of slow zones on our system, whether it is crime or disturbances, we need to deploy resources in a smart way to address them. Whether it is something that we need to look at from a management perspective, operationally, and if there's more we could be doing to manage service when we do have an incident. So I'm pushing and working with my team to look at our performance metrics in a new way. And we've changed some things internally in how we meet and discuss those metrics, because I want to make sure that our team here at CTA has information from that data that is actionable and that will result in a positive customer improvement experience. And so I want to elevate that and take us to the next level in the way we talk about data. Places, centered in welcoming places, and this has been something that I feel passionately about in terms of CTA being a place that inspires such goodwill in our city. People love looking at our vehicles, at our stations. There's so much we can do to inspire a positive environment on CTA. We have a successful Refresh and Renew program that we're very proud of in terms of upkeep at our stations. But I want to wrap it up in a more creative, community-driven way. You've seen that talked about today in terms of our concession space outreach that we're going to be doing this summer, and some good news that will be coming there with partners that reflect the vibrant communities that we serve and create a great opportunity to have a positive environment on CTA. In April, we also had our autism awareness campaign, which used our PA system, our loudspeakers, to have children making announcements on the system. It was incredibly well received, and I loved it as kind of a toe dip into using our system and our PA system to perhaps do something more creative with our environment that creates a welcoming, warm environment for our riders. Of course, we also, in the last 100 days, we're excited to announce work on the ASAP work at Austin Green Line, and are moving forward with the RPM stations that will be opened in the coming year. And that's an exciting aspect in terms of the places that we serve as well. The last thing on places I want to mention is a concept that people are probably familiar with in many regards, of crime prevention through environmental design. And I'm working with our team to think about ways that we can improve our spaces in a positive way that influences incidents in a more positive way on our system. So that's through a creative, artistic way. It's also through finding spaces that would benefit from being closed off and would not inspire activity that we don't want on our system. So looking with fresh eyes at our built environment to make sure we're taking those opportunities as well. And that concept of crime prevention through environmental design is a useful tool to give us as we approach that. The last component I would mention is partnerships. And you've heard me talk a lot about outreach and engagement as a tenet of how I've approached this period. I feel deeply that people that care about transit share many of the same goals, and that we can all work together to move in a better direction. The discussion around Springfield has offered great opportunities for connection between leadership, between elected officials of various organizations and places to kind of get input and to feel that CTA has an open door to feedback. We want to hear what people are experiencing. We want to hear what people want more from at CTA. And I've really enjoyed those conversations. We have some key developing relationships with the universities as well locally for some input on data analysis, and that our performance review be based in a strategic way, as well as downtown groups. The Chicago Loop Alliance, we're going to be visiting tomorrow and talking with them about ways to partner together. And I just think, the sky is the limit on what can come from those type of conversations. I'd also say partnerships with the Mayor's Office of Community Safety, with Cindy Soto as the Chief Homelessness Officer. There's a ton of resources and work being done on the policy side in our city that we can partner with to move things quickly along in many regards, and I'm committed to that work. So I'll pause there. Appreciate the opportunity to kind of run through some of the work that's been done over the past 100 days.
Thank you, Nora. Any comments?
I have some. First of all, congratulations on your first 100 days, which have not been easy. And you being both in Springfield and here, and meeting with writers and meeting with workers and being everywhere. And it shows and it's being seen. And I have been, as a board member, really relieved to hear feedback from you, from people from very different arenas, all of them agreeing that this is a welcome change. And these are folks that I really appreciate and that I have in high esteem, because they are not the types that deliver praise freely and without content. So thank you for that. Also, Nora, I wanted to start also thanking you because you started your remarks today with a difficult conversation, which is that we have lost 4 Chicagoans in the past 4 weeks within our system in very dire circumstances. And I know this is a very difficult conversation that others wouldn't have talked about. It goes unsaid. There are many folks out there who die in our system, outside of our system, whose names we don't know or ever know. And I wouldn't want us to be that type of place that doesn't talk about that and doesn't recognize the tragedies that we have to deal with, or has ideas and welcomes people to help fix those problems. So thank you for this. Also appreciate the update on the legislation and the vision that you have laid out. Those 4 pillars, I think they're very important. I really encourage CTA to especially focus on the first and the last one, the people, right? Looking at what is that our writers are telling us, what is that our workers are telling us, but also very important, the partnerships part. I think traditionally, having been outside of CTA for quite some time, this has not been an agency that has been very open to collaboration and partnerships. And we have had to kind of drag into the table sometimes. And to your credit, after dragging and dragging, you all showed up. But that's not the best way to do it. I think a more proactive approach, reconnecting with community-based organizations, reconnecting with advocates, including the ones that challenge us the most, and welcoming ways of communication that are not the ones that we are more used to. I think it's where the productive conversation and the solutions are going to be. So again, let me know how else can we support you in this next home stretch. I really hope the conversations in Springfield are supportive. And as you all know, while I welcome and encourage preparing for the worst, I also want to think about the best and think about from a place of abundance. So my question to you, Nora, is if we were successful, if we were able to break through all the opposition obstacles and get the $1.5 billion that we desperately need as a region, where would you start? What are those top priorities that you would tackle if you were given the funding that we deserve?
Sure, and I appreciate the question. We've spoken publicly more broadly across the system about the increase in frequency across bus and rail, but I think it is important to make that more concrete for people as to what, more tangibly what that means that they can picture. What you would see with a level of that magnitude would be an expansion of the frequent network you see to another 25 bus routes across the system. You'd also see a focus on our evening, late night, and weekend service and expanding the span of service. So on routes like the 18th Street route or the Armitage route that currently end at about 6:30, you would see, for example, service lasting until 10 p.m. at that frequency. I think people that live our bus network are very familiar with an awareness that although a bus route may span a map like you see it across or north and south, the service frequency reduces at certain ends of it at a certain time. And I've been trying to make the point that with funding, you would see people wouldn't have to be rushing out to meet that bus that they know is going to now only go deliver a frequency that's much more spanned out. So things like the 18th Street bus, the Armitage route. Our overnight network overall would be evaluated for improvements, and you'd be able to see things like 24/7 hour service to Midway Airport. That would be huge. And we would do that if we got the funds, provide that service. I also think what's relevant here is the fare box recovery ratio and the pressure that's on CTA with that requirement to be serving more higher ridership areas. And that's where you would see routes like the number 8 Halstead route, for example, is currently that more frequency is concentrated from 42nd Street to Madison, for example, and we'd be able to bring that frequency across the entire route, again, perpetuating a more robust, fluid, thriving bus network that we don't see today. So those are just some examples of what it means when you say add frequency, that hopefully gives people something to picture. We're ready. If we got the funding, we're ready to go to institute those improvements.
Thank you. And I need to ask this because all of these improvements, the 25 more frequent buses, the evenings, the weekends, the 10 p.m.s and all that doesn't work if people don't feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
And people feel safe, right? So what could we do if we had that type of resources to improve the safety of our network?
Yeah, and that's we've spent at CTA a great amount on our security guards. So you see my focus is deploying them in a specific way. I do believe that resources are always welcome on CTA, further resources, and then using them smartly is key. And connecting people with the resources that are serving them is also a primary goal. So I think a more informed, direct deployment of resources that meet the experiences that people are having on CTA is front and center of what you would do with additional security resources. There's a lot of discussion, as there should be in Springfield, around security. And my concern has just been that we don't lose sight also on the cost of our service. And I have been voicing that additional police are welcome on CTA and there are associated costs with that. So I think to your question, just making sure people are informed that when they put forth additional police resources, they do understand the cost of that magnitude, and they're incorporating that when they're legislating those requirements.
I know, and also last year we set aside $3.3 billion for piloting additional ways or ways of dealing with security in addition to police, which is much needed and necessary. How are we doing? When are we starting the pilots? What can we start testing out there that brings a sense of we are actually trying new things?
Absolutely. We have several initiatives that have been identified for stakeholder input at this point. That authorization of funds last year, I was present for that. I do recognize that it was a bit under a different climate in terms of CTA's commitment to these initiatives. So I'm viewing that in the larger sphere of a lot of work that's going on under my leadership. But so I want to move not just one pilot, Director, I'd like to move several so that we're trying out the things that we know people want to see. The work that's underway is related in large part to the principles that you saw me produce when I spoke. So an initiative around elevators, and that's a crime prevention environmental design component to eliminate spaces where people may be conducting activity we don't want on CTA. We're looking at places through that. We are looking at non-law enforcement personnel and what that would mean on CTA and doing that in an informed way. We know that crisis response teams are key to success on CTA. I'm also in conversations with the Mayor's Office of Community Safety on that topic to move that forward. So we're moving those initiatives forward, as well as real-time deployment of resources in a way that's more active and engaged. And that may sound kind of direct, but involves a lot of coordination of resources at our control center and with police and our security team. So we're already working on those and they're underway, and we can continue to keep you updated on those.
Thank you. Keep the good work and let me know how I can help.
Sure.
Sure. I think we've spent a lot of time talking about security, but safety is a big component also. You know, Director Raquel mentioned that we lost a number of people, customers for the past month or so. I know we don't have that position filled in terms of safety person. Where are we in that process?
Sure, Chairman. I do want to clarify, we have a full safety department. Our Vice President of Safety is leading those efforts. There's been different approaches over time to how those departments work together and whether there's a chief or not. It has not always been the case that someone has that role of oversight between the two departments. The Vice President is our full safety leader at this time, and we're working very closely with our office on that. I actually started my career at CTA in the safety department and understand deeply from that time the components of what the department needs to execute. We may take an approach of a role that combines those two, but as we consider that, what's important is the mission of the safety department and that they're executing it, and they are. So we can keep you updated on the approach to that leadership role, but I do want to reassure you that all that work is fully completed and in fact ramping up under the connection with our office and the focus on it at this time.
Any other questions, comments?
So I just, when we talked about this, I am really excited about, especially on the security, the creative move or recommendations that have come. I think as we move forward, it is important for, I think, the public to know the actions that we've taken and the result from it in our conversation. So I would, you know, there are some things in the way the plan is where I think there is early activation and quick starts. So if we could get more on a regular basis, updated results from those quick starts where we can, I think I'd focus on those. As we're thinking big and strategizing, let's also be mindful of the things that are actionable now. And provide some sort of an update to the public in terms of like why you're doing that and what's the outcome from that. I think that would be super duper helpful for us to quickly realize what's gonna be fruitful versus what's not, so we can make quick decisions. But I agree with you. I think a lot of the areas that you touched upon I think are something that we've regularly heard. And so just being very crisp and clear on each of those 4 buckets, what are the key things you're focusing on? If that could be part of the report moving forward, that would be super helpful as well.
Absolutely. Yep.
Our next order of business is the approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting of April 9th, 2025. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Director Raquel, seconded by Director Lee, that the minutes from April 9th, 2025 be approved. We will take a roll call vote. Director Ja, Director Raquel.
Yes.
Director Ortiz.
Yes.
Chairman Barclay.
Yes.
Director Jakes.
Yes.
Director Lee.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Our next item on the agenda is executive session. Kent Ray, it's my understanding that today we do not have an executive session.
Our Chairman, there are no matters for moving into closed session at today's meeting.
We will now address board agenda item 7, board matters. Georgette, do we have any board matters today?
There are no board matters for today, Chairman Barclay.
Our next order of business is a report from the Committee on Finance, Audit and Budget, Director Jakes.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The committee met earlier this morning and approved May 14th, 2025 committee minutes and reviewed the finance report. The committee reviewed 4 ordinances. 1, review of an ordinance authorizing a lease to Polk Transit Food Services of retail concession space located at 1713 West Polk Street in Chicago. Number 2, review of an ordinance authorizing a lease to Chunk Pizza of retail concession space located at 1710 West 18th Street. Number 3, review of an ordinance authorizing an amendment to an intergovernmental agreement with the Chicago Housing Authority for the acquisition of real property for the Red Line Extension Project. Number 4, review of an ordinance authorizing the purchase of real property located at 2274 North Milwaukee Avenue, Chicago for all stations accessibility program. Blue Line. Committee also reviewed 8 contracts. The committee placed the 4 ordinances and 8 of the contracts on the omnibus. The committee approved and recommended for board approval 4 ordinances and 8 contracts. This concludes the report of the Finance, Audit and Budget Committee.
Thank you, Director Jakes. I will now entertain a motion to approve the omnibus.
So moved.
Second. It's been moved by Director Raquel, seconded by Director Lee, that the omnibus be approved. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Lee?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Ortiz? Director Raquel?
Yes.
Director Ja? The motion passes.
Our next order of business is the construction report from Bill Mooney, our Chief Infrastructure Officer, and Brittany Johnson, our Senior Manager of Certification and Compliance Programs in CTA's Diversity Program Department.
Morning, I'm Bill Mooney, your Chief Infrastructure Officer, and I'm joined by
Brittany Johnston, Diversity Programs.
We are here with your monthly construction update. So today we will cover most of the projects we normally talk about. We also have brought back our Refresh and Renew project, which is one of our major customer-facing investment initiatives, as well as some updates kind of on the overall ASAP program outside of the specific projects. So moving forward to Canal Barry Damon, where we start. At Barry, we have all the traction power equipment within the facility at this point. It's a big milestone as that one looks to come online later this summer. It is a huge process to get this equipment installed, wired up, and then tested and commissioned. The commission process in and of itself can take a few months as it is very safety sensitive. So here you see some of that equipment being craned into place and set up. And here's a couple other photos kind of around that being loaded in. On the photo on the left, you can see what is the diode duct that connects both our transformers and our rectifiers. So that's how we convert our AC power from the transformer into the rectifier, which ultimately makes our DC power. And that we don't cable that. There is actually a metal bar that goes between those, a brass bar. Here you can see kind of a profiled picture of that. Having that perfectly level, because it does sit out there cantilevered and fully bolted together, is really important for longevity and the performance of the equipment. Moving on to Canal. Canal is fully online at this point. We have all beneficial use of that facility. We are actually, interestingly enough, seeing not only power significantly going to the blue line, which was its design purpose to help share the power from the green line with the blue line, but we're also seeing at times peak power demand in the green line drawing some power back from the blue line when it's available in there. So we're seeing the benefit of the regenerative braking that occurs on our 7,000 trains as well as our 5,000 trains, and that power that gets put back the system to be used again, going both directions. And it's actually was a pleasant surprise that as we started to see the modeling of the benefits of this facility, being able to see that work both ways. Here's some of the finished work at Canal. This is footwalk that goes around the facility itself to make it easy to access around. And moving on to our next project, our Harlem Bus Bridge had a huge kind of big moment in this project. It was our big deck pour. So here you can see that pour in progress. As I've mentioned a few times, we don't often do big bridge projects. We do lots of structure. We have over 70 miles of elevated structure that we renew, but not the prototypical highway bridge, since this is a prototypical highway bridge. It was done all in one pour during one day with a lot of special equipment in preparation for that. Here you can see a different angle of that pour going on in process. Here you can see the gantry that's used to disseminate the concrete and level it out as it moves down the whole deck. And here's the finished product. So from here, it gets finished out with a topping surface. They pour up the walls on the sides, and then we start dealing with the approaches and putting back in the canopies and all those other features. Here you can see kind of the underground duct banks. I've shown you some work on over the last couple of months that are being installed and approach to the bridges to facilitate the facilities that are on there. Moving on to our all station accessibility project updates, I would highlight a couple changes on this over program change. We moved Austin from beginning to ongoing as we had our groundbreaking last month and it's fully underway with construction. And State and Lake, CDOT has NTP'd with their contractor, giving them notice to proceed. And so we moved that into the beginning phase of construction as well. California, which the board took action upon earlier and with an acquisition there, is that currently out to bid. And hopefully in the upcoming months, the board will see a proposal there on a recommended vendor to start construction there as well. Montrose is completing up its design, as are the 16 elevator rehab projects. And we are finalizing negotiations for Belmont and Irving Park for our designer of record to get going there. And at Pulaski, Oak Park, and Ridgeland, we are currently in the procurement phase for those designers. So in the upcoming months, as we execute those contracts, you'll see more changes on this page. Moving to the projects themselves, Austin is in full gear. So here you can see them finishing off the head house at platform level. So this is the Mason entrance, which will become available to us when we close down the main entrance and facilitate and start installing that elevator later this summer. Late June right now is when it's kind of looking about. And so you can see them putting this is ceiling that's being in there and the roof for the canopy itself. This is actually the roof of the station house entrance at Mason. This was right outside the area we had the groundbreaking, and so this is putting in the curb wall along the roof. And here are some of the relocations in the street. So as part of the expansion, the Austin station entrance to accommodate the ramp and elevator there, we have to relocate a bunch of utilities in the street. You've seen a lot of that work going. So this is actually moving the light pole out from its current position further out so that we can widen the street out for that. At Racine, we continue to move along with the station and progress here. Here you can see the facade of the station going up. I've shown you a couple progress photos. This one, you can really see the defined architectural feature of that CTA embossed in the precast concrete. It looks really cool from a distance if you have an opportunity to go by there. You can also see the great waterfall stair coming together, kind of the curtain wall around that, and the stairwell will be going in shortly. On this interior, you're starting to look like a station. So here you can see our customer assistant kiosk being built out. You can see the lighting, permanent lighting being installed, the ceiling framing in place. And we've begun the platform as we've come out of winter. We've begun the platform work. So they have started repainting all the platform again. Here they are installing purlins. They are the darker gray cross features there. That ultimately will be what the translucent canopy gets installed to. So this is a whole brand new canopy structure associated with it, which brings in a lot of natural light, makes it feel open and airy. You see this in a lot of the modern stations we do, and we often like to try and work this into the retrofits as well. So one of the biggest things we've successfully secured over the last month is we've begun work on our directional bore. This is a critical path item for the project. In this circumstance, we are boring underneath the highway to bring in the new power lines for the station. So the elevators require a significant amount more electricity than our standard historical stations have. So we have to bring in a whole brand new series of ComEd services to it. We also have to bring in new sanitary lines and new water lines and all those things. And we actually usually put them under the highway. This is a pretty challenging thing to permit because it's IDOT property that you're working on. So you have to get separate permissions from the Illinois Department of Transportation, but then it actually goes through a whole City of Chicago Office of Underground review. And so you get comments for one, it starts the process over with the other. And so we've been battling through this for a while, and we're really excited to see this moment occur. So it was a big win in progressing this project. We're targeting kind of Racine towards the end of summer this year and being able to open that up and swing over to work on the Loomis side. So making great progress. Moving down to its mate in the project, Morgan. So here you can see the framework and expansion steel. This is the last 3 feet. So you've seen a lot of work at Morgan when we put up all that steel. This is the tie-in 3 feet to the bridge that was finalized and installed in a recent weekend outage. And they now started pouring the concrete out there to fulfill kind of the full connection point from Morgan Bridge to the substation. It's also getting ready to start receiving its facade. I've shown you kind of updates on this. So here they're installing all the brackets that precast concrete panels get attached to. Sorry. And so you'll see those start showing up in the upcoming monthly photos as well. Refresh and Renew is chugging ahead as we move into that season. We've completed a whole series of projects around the opening of the baseball in Chicago, both on the north side and the south side. We did refreshes of all those stations. We have also moved to Pulaski on the Congress, which is done, and we're doing work currently at Oak Park on the Green Line, Austin on the Blue Line, and Kedzie on the Blue Line. Austin and Kedzie both being on the Congress as well. And we've completed work at 3 bus turnarounds and are currently working at 79th and Western. Here are some before after. So this is at Pulaski on the Congress. So this is the auxiliary entrance that has been closed for many years. As part of our Pulaski ASAP project, this entrance actually gets reopened. But here we did some good neighbor cleanup of this area, spruced it up, cleaned up the area, fixed some of the fencing around it. Here is Addison. So this is kind of going away from the footprint of the station, trying to get a little more expansive in our impact on the neighborhood around that. Each time we go back through these stations, trying to get a little broader in our scopes. Similar here is at 35th Bronzeville. So this is further down from the station entrance, moving down kind of to those areas, spruce up kind of in that footprint. Here's some of the interior station photos at Sox 35th. Halsted Waveland, so here's exteriors to the bus turnaround facilities there. You have the windbreak at Kedzie and 63rd. The interior at 55th and St. Louis. So this is our employee facing facilities. We often show you photos of the improvements in those bathrooms and other ancillary spaces. Moving on to RPM. It has been a very exciting few months here as we wind this project down and we look to open stations and as our phase change later this summer. We have had some significant milestones in the area around Roscoe and Clark Street, which we call Clark Junction, as part of our red purple bypass. So here you can see the last bit of track work being installed here. So for the first time ever last month, we ran 5 track operations out of that territory. So with the bypass in service, we had a series of phase changes over the last 4 months, untangling the tangle we had created and building all this and putting it fully back in service. So on May 4th, we actually opened Clark Junction fully complete. That was a huge milestone. So originally opened in 1895, it was reestablished in 2025 in its new current condition. Here is what it looked like prior to the project. Here's what it looks like today. So this is a huge, exciting milestone. This is part of the key to core capacity for us on this project, was untangling the interaction when the Brown Line used to go across and tie up the whole thing with the flyover and the modernizations that went around it. Certainly it took a massive amount of people, and I would say that no more important than our operations partners. What we asked out of operations to phase the construction work here was monumental. They did it seamlessly. It was, if you don't build on railroads for a living, this was probably more complicated than anything else we did on this job. And so certainly a lot of appreciation goes to the operations team and successfully pulling this off. Here's a small photo of the RPM team. We went out on the morning for those first train rides in the full junction. I baked some banana bread. We had a little potluck for that. My banana bread is very good. I'm glad to make a report at some point. And we were able to celebrate that moment together as a team because it was a significant milestone. When you talk about projects that go on 7 years, those minor milestones are huge wins for those teams. So up to the other side of the project, which is quickly coming to a close as well. So we look at Lawrence to Bryn Mawr. Here you see the platform finishes up at Lawrence. This is steel around the enclosure for the stairwell. Here at Bryn Mawr is about 90% complete right now. It is the furthest along of all the stations. Here you can see the finished kiosk. It's got the wrapping still around the stainless steel to keep it in place. Here is the customer man gate that goes next to that. And right next to that goes the fare equipment. Last features going in that station. Here at Argyle is one of the finer architectural features of these stations. So each of the stations had its own community-driven design process around it. And Argyle had some very specific requests out of the Asian community around it. And this accent lighting was really key to it. So it actually changes colors. It can be motion. It has actually pavers that mirror it, that go underneath there. For those who have ever been out at Argyle, it's actually a fully raised pedestrian street. And so we have kind of an intersection of pavers that go in as part of the project that match this. Here you can see some platform work. We're starting to get name signage up there. You go by Bryn Mawr, you can actually see the right-of-way side name signage out there as well now. And we continue to communicate. So we are regularly, routinely holding our office hours. We meet weekly with the alders in the affected area. We routinely have meetings with the Chambers of Commerce. And we actually hosted a tour for the Northwestern University Transportation Club. So we took a small group of students out on the system talking about what we did with this project and kind of how it was done. With that, I'll turn it over to Brittany.
Thanks, Bill. Good morning, directors. I'll be providing you an update on RPM numbers through March and our DBE and workforce outreach activities for the months of March and April. So as of March 31st, 122 unique DBEs have been awarded more than $299 million between the design and construction packages on RPM Phase 1. 55 of them are new to CTA. DBEs have been paid more than $233 million to date, which puts wash floors attainment at 20.56% of the 20% goal. So on the workforce side, as of March 31st, 2,666 unique individuals have worked over 2.3 million labor hours and earned over $142 million to date. Wash Floor is on track to meet their workforce goals. These goals represent over 1,000 unique workers that have had an opportunity to start or continue their careers in the building trades. In March and April, we hosted and attended a number of events to inform small businesses and residents about the contracting and career opportunities on CTA projects. On March 24th, Diversity Programs collaborated with the Painters District Council number 14 to host an event where representatives from the Painters Union provided information to 14 attendees on how to become a union signatory contractor. The presentation also included details about collective bargaining agreements and the benefits of bidding as a union contractor. The CTA team provided information to the audience on how to do business with CTA as well. Next slide. On March 28th, CTA hosted its spring pre-apprenticeship fair at South Suburban College. During this event, CTA welcomed 28 exhibitors, which included our workforce partners, CTA prime contractors, 6 building trade unions, and several pre-apprenticeship trainers, including Education Design Development Research Corporation and Power in Chicago. Over 260 attendees, including students from Thornton Fractional Township District 215, Thornton Township High School District 205, Bremen Community High School District 228, South Suburban College students, and Far South Side job seekers in construction. On April 8th, 22 firms graduated from the CTA's biannual Small Business Educational Series. This 9-part cohort was construction focused, where small businesses learn how to be successful on CTA projects. Thank you to Acting President Learson for attending and providing inspirational remarks that encourage the small business owners to continue to invest in themselves and pursue work with the CTA. In the fall, we will run a session focused on work services firms. And lastly, on April 23rd, 2025, CTA collaborated with various City of Chicago agencies for the 2025 Spring Citywide Career Fair at Olive Harvey College. During this event, 80 exhibitors, including workforce resource agencies, government agencies, and employers from various sectors, provided information to over 500 job seekers, most of whom reside on the far south side. To date, we are aware of 3 on-the-spot job hires. The planning committee continues to reach out to the attendees and employers to collect data on hires that are made as a result of the fair. We'll continue to bring you our activities and our work to advocate, certify, and invest in DBEs, SBEs, and career seekers. And that concludes our report. Please let me know if you have any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Moody or Ms. Johnson?
Can I ask a question? So earlier we were talking about collaboration and spaces at the stations. Is there an opportunity here to maybe because we're doing so many outreach to invite some of these other partners into the events so you're reaching a wider audience? Have you looked at
Specifically on the workforce and DBE and the development?
The retail space we have, I think we're also looking at creatively using other spaces. Is there a way for us to cross-pollinate some of that, or also even maybe making these events more widespreadly available for other parts of the city to engage? So it's more not siloed into one area versus kind of using these time, effort for greater outreach, I'm guessing.
So I will say, next week we'll be having, an event for small businesses, at Truman College on the north side. So yes, the short answer is yes, and we can definitely, talk about the spaces that we have available as well.
Yeah, I would say broadly, the program works a rotation of events through the city, recognizing that it is challenging for people who are seeking opportunities at times to travel from one end to the other, so that we try and work kind of the whole footprint. And as these are tend to be larger gatherings, often we become a little more limited in spaces that become available to us. Now, in the micro market conversation, which is I think really where you're thinking in this, I think there are opportunities. I think we have some unique spaces that we could do all day, kind of stop by stands or things like that with some of the local partners. As we come back in later this summer with those concepts, let us chew on that a little bit more and see how we can put that into thoughts.
Yeah, I was more thinking not expanding the audience, but more representatives from different organizations as part of your core group. So that way, you know, whatever you're sharing as part of that, because the attendees are the attendees, they get a chance to hear from other areas of the city as well as part of this program. So that way you can identify some synergies in terms of where you can partner better. If that makes sense, because it seems like you are doing a lot. How do we use the same people?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think,
expand and bring more people into the mix as from on the partnership side.
Yeah, I would highlight one initiative that it's called the Citywide Career Fair, but it is really a CTA-driven initiative. So it came out of our conversations in the community on Red Line Extension, really. So we would go out for events and we would talk about construction trade jobs, right? They're coming, right? They're construction trade jobs. Let's talk about apprentice. Let's talk about all those other things. And a lot of the feedback we would get was, we want jobs today, need jobs today. Like, not all of us are going to go into the construction trade. What other jobs are out there? So we worked on how we could group mass and show up at one place so folks who could have more partners, right? They could hear about those opportunities, not just from our footprint in the projects we're working on, or even our hiring directly, but also how the city services, how Department of Aviation, how Park District, how private entity security services. And so, you know, we had the most recent one, which is the third one, right? We've done, had 80 exhibitors there, our footprint was very small in the 80, all said and done. We worked with our broader partners to try and get everybody we could physically get into a space there to try and, I think, get to where you're talking about is like, we have a program that's very robust and we can leverage a lot of opportunity there, but we also have a network that is very available to us. And so we did kind of a really wide cast net, invited anyone that was interested, if you were support services, right? For people seeking, GEDs or looking to get barrier reductions for opportunities, like, we want you there. If you have one job available at this point, we want you there talking to people about the career path opportunities in your field. And so,
But yeah, Director, I think it's a great point in this new initiative we have in terms of our spaces to make sure we're finding where we already have this muscle worked in a way and using that information and that work to make sure we're building on it, not kind of working in silos and connecting it where it makes sense. And so when we move forward with the concession space work, we'll keep you updated on how we've used that synergy.
I think one thing that would be helpful, and you've heard me saying this before, is I think these construction reports are helpful to see how we are doing in building infrastructure related exclusively to transportation. And now that we have more of a comprehensive agenda on ETOD, we care about the spaces that we mentioned before in our stations that are more like for small business, et cetera. We partner with CHA, creating housing opportunities near transit. I think it will be helpful, if not every month, but at least quarterly, to get some sort of report on this other stuff that you are working on that is not just infrastructure for our trains and our buses to move around, but is around those areas that we have an investment in, that we have an interest in. And it could look like, the retail spaces that are vacant right now, and how are we refreshing them or presenting them to small businesses. It could look like housing or affordable housing near transit that you all have been working on with DOH, with CHA, with other developers, et cetera. It could look like community centers, health clinics, all that stuff. So that to me would be a valuable addition and very much in line with your vision, Nora, to build those partnerships and partnering with developers and with CHA and with, small businesses to make sure that we not only people from A to B, but we actually are connecting communities and building communities through our infrastructure.
We certainly can look similar to what Director Jha had asked for on the ASAP program, kind of just standing updates, like we could come up with something like that that talks about our portfolio and maybe every month doesn't get it, like that slide doesn't have a whole lot of movement every month, but when it does, we can highlight those features, but you'd have it there every month to talk, see what's on the agenda, and we could throw in some photos and some other things as there's real relevant information somehow.
Yeah, it's a great idea. And Bill and I have been talking and making some tweaks to the report also to make even the work we're presenting here explain to the public how that's impacting the service, right? So when we talk about substation work, what does that mean for service improving and getting faster, just to make it meaningful and tangible. But I recognize what you're saying is a certain category of continuing to talk about our places kind of beyond just direct construction work, but what we're doing with our built environment and how we're engaging with the community in that work.
Thanks.
Any other comments?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Chairman, can I make a public comment?
Yeah, sure.
Before we adjourn the meeting, I really wanted for a matter of record that every month for the past 7 years, and I'm speaking on me now, we sit here and for some, they say, yes, board members, you're doing a fine job. Others have literally called us stupid, unskilled, which I don't think that's acceptable, but we have to take it. I'm not pleased with what the alderman did, and I want that for a matter of record. He has a right to say what he said, like any other public commenter. And let me just say to my colleagues that I want to apologize for recognizing him, but he's an elected official. I didn't know he just kind of got my attention and was like, oh, you want to talk? So, but I didn't appreciate that. And I especially did not appreciate the references, even though no names were called, to snakes. That for me is the equivalent of when we have public commenters that refer to us as stupid. I say that, and it's the reason I wanted it on record. So even when those who like to write their reports or in the paper or whatever, have nothing kind to say about it, it becomes with the job, comes with the territory. But this is a very testy time in the life of CTA. Because if I remember correctly, for 10 years, we had one president. I came in under that president. So there's so many different things that are happening. And I don't know, if this is something that we have to talk about back there or something that the public knows, but it's a contentious time. Because on one hand, the mayor gets to choose. But on the other hand, we get to confirm or deny. And with that, you have transit advocates who are saying, we need a search. We've said what we've said. The mayor says what he says. People believe what they believe. And so in that, I would just hope that anyone that's listening would just understand that everyone has a right to their opinion. But I just don't believe anybody has a right to insult people, because the same way you do a great job and you know the ins and outs is the same way all of us here, we invest a certain amount of time every month into this as well. So I just wanted to make that for a fact for a public record that I didn't appreciate it. And I don't appreciate when public commenters call us stupid or things of that nature. So I just want to make sure, I just want to put that on record.
I'd like to follow your lead on that. I also did not appreciate it. I found it very respectful, definitely out of sequence from all of our different meetings in terms of when everyone else needs to speak, that there is a process that needs to be followed. There are regulations and there are processes that are implemented and very much looked after very carefully by everyone. And that was not followed here today. And so I just want to be clear that if we're treating everyone the same, which we all should be treated the same, then there are certain things that we need to follow and that we should all be respectful to everyone else at the table. And so I also didn't agree with the comments. I felt they were very targeted and no one here deserves that kind of treatment at all. I am also an advocate to make sure that we have a national search so that we can find the best and brightest. I recognize that this is a service role and not everybody wants to take it, but I do know that they are very talented, caring individuals that do want to take this role, are committed to this work, and have experience and leadership in making sure that the CTA provides the best service for the city and the region. So I'm really taken back by the situation this morning. I don't think any of us should have witnessed the kind of disrespect that was experienced today. And I just want that on record as well.
If I may, before you, I have a slightly different opinion on this because this was not the first time this happened. People have come and said, referenced the board, also the president. I mean, I think, let's be fair. When Dorval was in his seat, people came and said a lot of mean things to him. And I don't remember any of us saying that, let's not accept that. I think my understanding of the public comment is they come and they comment and they choose their words. They're not here to regulate what they can or can't say. So I'm not going to comment on what the gentleman did today or said. I'm not offended by it. I mean, that's how he felt. So if we want to condemn what he did, we should condemn everything else that other people have done as well. So that is my opinion. I do think that we need to follow the process, though. I agree with you that a lot of times we have a 3-minute cadence and we stop. But there are times when we have to react to the situation. Sometimes the matter is sensitive enough where we need to be flexible. And I think this was one of those. We have welcomed everybody who supports the national search. I am one of them. I support it too. But we also need to welcome people who don't. And they have the same right to be heard. And we need to give that space. So I'll say that. At the end of the day, attacks or not, I think as a board, we have a responsibility. And there are some rights that we have been given, like you said, to deny or approve the candidates that come in front of us. And I think this is a very, very special moment where there is this is different. I think the way the environment is, the needs of the transit with the funding and setting us up for the future, I think we all have the responsibility to be very careful in making a decision that is right for the CTA and the people of Chicago. And everything else is secondary. Who the candidate is, who's bringing the candidate. I think we, with your counsel, need to do what is given to us as a responsibility of the board. And that's what we are trying to follow. individually without understanding what our role here is. So I want that to be also in the record that it has nothing to do with who the person is or, why we are making it. I think we're all trying to do the best for the CTA and the people of Chicago. And that's otherwise I would not be in this seat. So I just want to make sure that, that is clear. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. I concur with your comments. Let me just state that many times it is the chair's prerogative to allow a person to speak that's not necessarily signed up. We did a few days ago. We generally have 5 public commenters. We had 9, 10. So we were flexible because people wanted to speak. And I didn't want to deny them the opportunity to express how they feel one way or the other. Former Director Irvine wanted to speak last Thursday, and he had not signed up, but I gave him that deference because he was a former board member. So I exercised some flexibility to allow him to speak. And when an elected official, I thought he was just observing, but when Director Jakes tapped me on the shoulder and said, hey, see if he wants to make a comment. It's fine. I didn't know what he was going to say. I haven't spoken with him, but it's what it is. And, this is still a country where we have First Amendment rights. So whether we agree, but the bottom line is this freedom to express. I've seen so many things. I agree with you. With former President Carter, he was treated horribly. He was. The personal attacks, where we even had to add security to his residence. And I saw silence. I didn't see anybody stand up and take any affirmative action. So I do believe we should use a yardstick, but it should be a fair yardstick. And so I would not deny an elected official an opportunity to speak. Any of the aldermen that walked into this room, they're on the agenda or not on the agenda, I would grant them the opportunity to speak. I didn't know what he was going to say, but it's just one citizen of Chicago and his opinion. So we've all been attacked personally. And so I don't necessarily agree and embrace all of his remarks, but the bottom line is I do defend his right to speak. Anything further before we?
Yes, Chairman. I understand that when there is elected officials here, there is an opportunity to invite them to speak. I also want to acknowledge that public commenters, regular citizens, some of them are here today, take hours of their time to sign up, spend a lot of time, leave money on the table because they have jobs to come here and go through a process. So if we're going to have a process, I would encourage all of us to be fair as to how do we allow people to come in here, and also want to be respectful of the fact that they are coming here and they are regular citizens. Our elected officials, all of them have public forums and platforms from which they can speak, from city council to committees to all kinds of press can come to them. Our residents have these 3 minutes here, right? So I want us to be fair and equitable to that. And while I understand the courtesy and the respect to invite elected officials to speak, I also want to be clear, who do we allow to express and what in here, and how does that compare with others who have only this little window, which, by the way, is not the easiest to access because our system is complicated. And the other thing I wanted to say is that I've been concerned about how this process is unfolding, and I have shared this both privately with you all and publicly. I would love us to have a professional process. I would like us to have one that is not either or. It's a collaboration. Sharing power is not giving power away. There is a way to share decision-making. The mayor has a role and a prerogative and a capacity to select. We do have one the governor's office could also be part of this. I believe in collaboration. I believe in coalitions. I believe in bringing as many voices as possible and have a process and a transparent way of doing things. And I'm very concerned about this either or, us versus them, zero-sum game that has taken the city nowhere, because as you know, that kind of segregation, it hasn't taken us anywhere. It has cost us a lot of lives and money and capacity to work together. So I do support a national search, but more important than that, I support a process where we are partnering and collaborating with the mayor's office, with the governor's office to get us the best possible candidate to be the next president of CTD.
Thank you. Any other comments before we conclude? Okay,
Thank you for allowing us to have that time.
no problem. Our final order is new business. Did we cover that?
There's no new business.
Since there's no further business to come before the board, may I have a motion to adjourn Chicago Transit Board meeting of May 14th, 2025.
So moved.
It's been moved by Director Recajo, seconded by Director Lee, that the meeting of May 14th, 2025 be adjourned. We'll take a roll call vote. Director Lee? Director Jakes?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay?
Yes.
Director Ortiz?
Yes.
Director Recajo?
Yes.
Director Ja?
Yes.
Chairman Barclay, the motion passed.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.